Okay, so today we're gonna paint this really cute vintage ornament. We're gonna use mint green, some darker greens, and a little bit of coral and red because the ornament's gonna have the mistletoe or holly, whatever it is, on top of it. So the first thing we're gonna do is we need to draw our ornament, and we're gonna start with just an oval shape at the top. And then I'm gonna do a smaller oval underneath, and then kind of come out into a point. If it's easier, you could also draw a triangle and then make it rounded. Also, I'm having to draw darker just so you guys can see it, but you wanna draw the pencil lines as light as possible so that you can't see them through your painting. I started using this drawing pen, it's a drawing pencil, Warm Gray by Derwent, D-E-R-W-E-N-T, and it's kind of been amazing. It kind of disappears once I start painting on it, which is really cool. Okay, so we have this kind of vintagey ornament, and I'm gonna put a line across the top just to give it some character. And we're gonna leave this white. And we're gonna leave these colored. I'm gonna make this just slightly bigger. Okay. And then what I'm gonna do is draw the holly. So just draw some circles. And then just these little leaves coming out. Kind of like a flat C curve. Up here, and then let's add a little ribbon, kind of like half of a side of a ribbon. So I'm going to bring it up into this kind of teardrop shape. That's going to be the inside of the ribbon fold, and then bring it out here and back down. And these are some lines that are going to be in the ribbon to show that it's kind of folded. And we don't have to go too, we don't have to make it perfectly realistic. And then I'm gonna bring out the end of the ribbon out here. So I'm just doing this kind of S curve, and then I'm going to bring it down, go up like a little triangle, another triangle, and then kind of curve it in. Okay. All right, so we have our little drawing here, and now we're just going to mix up our colors. So grab your palettes, and I know I say this in almost every video, but I use 2 water cups. One I use for warm colors like reds and oranges and yellows, and the other one I use for cool colors like blues and greens and purples. It just helps my colors not to get murky. So we're gonna mix up kind of a leafy green. To be honest, I don't know what colors I have in this palette because I've had it for so long, so forgive me. I know there's some like sap green. I definitely know this is sap green here, so it's a little more lime colored in tone, and that'll be good for some lighter areas. And then we want a darker green. We just want some different shades of green, so you can add a little blue to your green if you want. Or a little yellow if you want it to be more bright. I also want us to have a minty color, so I am going to bring in some of this blue. I'm actually going to mix it over here because we're not really using blue today. So I'm going to grab a little green and mix it with this blue for our mint color. And we don't want it to get too muted, so use a blue that's kind of bright. And then maybe just a touch of yellow. Okay, I'm good with that. Mix up a little more green for those holly leaves. Last year I painted mistletoe, or what I thought was mistletoe, and somebody so lovingly said in the comments that I was wrong. So we're painting red berries today. I guess technically that's holly. I think mistletoe has white berries. But if you have that much time on your hands to be upset about something like that, then I think you need to reevaluate your life. Just kidding. appreciate the person that told me that. All right, then we're gonna mix up some red, and I thought it would be kind of fun to bring in a corally color for the berries. So not just stark red, but kind of coral. So I have, I think this is tangerine orange right here. It's pretty bright. And maybe bring in a little bit of this yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is such a great color to have. I mix it with so many different things. Maybe bring in a little bit of lemon yellow deep to brighten it, and a little bit of opera rose. Okay, so I guess I do know what some of these colors are. Okay, the opera rose is gonna make it a little pink, so we gotta watch it there. Okay, I am happy with that, and then we are going to use some red. This is Scarlet Lake. We're gonna use some pretty bright red when we paint that bow. Okay, so we can get started with what we have here. Rinse off your brush. The first thing we're gonna do is paint the ornament. So go to your minty green. That's my lovely dog that barks all the time. Grab your minty green and just start putting a wash in. I'm so sorry, my dog is distracting me. Okay, sorry about that. I had to cut the video for a second to get my dog to quiet down. So we're just taking that minty green and just applying a light wash. So I have a good amount of water on my brush. You do not want the water to be dripping off your brush. So if it is, you need to lightly tap it on a paper towel. But we're just coming in here and painting. Don't worry about, you're just painting within the lines right now. It doesn't need to be anything spectacular. We're just getting a base down. And again, make sure your pencil lines are really light, because if they're not light, you're gonna see them through. Like you can see this kind of, not kind of, you can definitely see the pencil line. And we're leaving this part white because that's just a little detail in the Christmas bulb. So while this dries, if you guys wanna use this technique, what I do is I rinse off my brush, get all the paint off, and then I dry off my brush on a paper towel, and then I come in and just press my brush down, and I can pull up pigment that I don't want. So it was a little too dark for me, so I came in and pulled up that pigment. Now, since this is wet, we don't want to paint anything that's touching this, otherwise it will bleed, and we're not going for that look today. So we're not going to paint the ribbon right now, but we are going to work on these cute little leaves. So grab some of that kind of darker green, maybe you added a little blue to it, and you're gonna want to load up your brush. Make sure it's not too watery. Sometimes I'll just flick my brush like that, or I'll put it on a paper towel to get some of the extra water off. Now what you're gonna do is you're going to outline this little leaf. So my paint is wet. Now I'm gonna go rinse off my brush, and I just have water on my brush, and I'm lightly tapping, or pulling, sorry. Pulling, painting, just bringing in some of that color. And if you want, say I wanted a little more yellow here, I would grab some yellowish green and just tap it, poke it in. Okay. Now just keep going around doing the same technique, but I suggest changing up your colors a little bit, or the shade of green. So you don't want to do everything the same or it's going to look boring. So I grabbed something that had a little more yellow in it. I'm outlining it. I'm rinsing my brush. I only have water on my brush, dabbing it on a paper towel so it's not too much water, and then just kind of filling it in. And I am going to take a little bit of a darker paint and just tap it here, because we have a little berry here, so maybe it would cast a shadow. Same thing right here, it might cast a little shadow. It just makes it look a little more interesting when you do stuff like that. And if that's too harsh for you, just come in with your brush and lightly, I'm literally like barely touching the paper to kind of just get it to spread a little bit. And then we just keep going. I'm gonna pick up a little more of this kind of forest green. Get around my berry here and outline. Rinse, tap, tap on my paper towel. So much of watercolor is controlling the water. And I mean, I can tell you how to do it, but to be completely honest, you kind of just have to experience it for yourself, because you're not gonna know what it feels like to have too much water on your brush until you have too much water on your brush. It's just part of the artist's experience. I'm gonna tap in some of this green, yellowy green. And since these are kind of underneath this leaf and closer to the Christmas ornament, technically these would be darker. So I am going to make these a tad bit darker. And be aware of that when you're painting. Where would the most light be coming from? And where would the least amount of light be coming from? Because that's gonna make your painting look more realistic and also look more, or just be more interesting to look at. Let me know in the comments if you guys enjoyed this tutorial. It's always helpful for me to know what kind of tutorials you like to see. I'm just tapping in some color just along this edge, because I envision that the light would be probably just peeking in through here. So there would be a dark shadow here and underneath. And then lastly, that last leaf, we can have that same dark color. I might throw in just a little green to make it, or sorry, like yellowy green to make it a little interesting. See, if you start to see that your paint isn't gliding smoothly, it's kind of skipping, probably means that you have too much paint and not enough water on your brush. Oops. And these little paintings can be used for Christmas cards. You could use it as a gift tag. That would be super cute. If you know how to digitize your artwork, you could put it on all sorts of things. I just made a tea towel with the painting that I did of my dog. So cute. I do have a video on how to digitize your artwork on my YouTube channel, so check that out if you don't know. So this is pretty much dry. We don't want to touch these berries because they're touching the wet leaves. So now we're gonna go to this ribbon. We're gonna grab our red, but we're really going to water it down. It should be really light. And we're gonna paint. I'm just gonna do one whole layer like I did for this. So it's a lot of water, not so much water that your paintbrush is dripping, but enough that you can get a really light wash. Just watch those little berries. I don't know why I get like a southern accent when I'm painting. And just come around here. If you guys have any suggestions for like Christmas, holiday inspired things that you would like to see, let me know. It'd kind of be cute to keep this pink, but we're gonna do red. Okay. So we have to be careful here because we do have these two areas that are wet. So we can't really paint this right now, but we can work on these. And what we're gonna do is go back and have that minty green. I need to mix up just a little bit more. I'm gonna add a little yellow. Sorry, a little green yellow. And if your color is looking too bright and you wanna mute it down, there's two options. You can add a little bit of black Or what I like to do is grab its opposing color. So the opposing color of blue would be yellow. The opposing color of green would be red. So if you just grab I'm talking like a tiny bit and mix it in, you can mute it a little bit if it's too bright for you. So now that I have this color, there's a little too much on my brush, so I am going to tap it onto my paper towel. And then I'm just going to come in here, and again, the light is coming in from this side. So we want to make this side darker. And I'm just gonna put a little shadow there, and then wash off my brush, get the water, and I'm just bringing in that water until it touches it. Seeing if that's dry yet. Sometimes it might not be dry, and what you need to do is either wait or grab a blow dryer and dry it. I'm gonna poke in a little shadow here because technically, you know, it would have a shadow underneath this little part. There we go. We're not doing too much on the ornament. And I think that this is probably, oops, see, I was impatient and it's not ready yet. Okay, so we're gonna let this dry because if I go into this right now, it's gonna ruin it, and we don't wanna ruin our painting. So if you need to let it dry, give it 10 minutes or grab your blow dryer. All right, I'm back, this is dry. I did make a mistake and I touched it and moved the paint, but we're not gonna focus on that. That's something easy that I can fix in Photoshop, or you could just use a sanding eraser, which is helpful. Sorry, a sand eraser can get rid of that too. All right, back to our painting. I'm gonna work on this part right here. We're going back to grabbing that minty color. Have to mix up a little bit more. Okay, and just coming in here, again, this is our side that would be a little bit darker with the shadow. I'm just kind of outlining it. Grabbing clean water, kind of just mixing it up. And you can leave an extra little highlight if you want. I'm going to add a shadow down here because I feel like this would also be providing a shadow on the ornament. When my grandmother passed away, I found she stopped putting out a Christmas tree later in her life, but she had all of these vintage ornaments and they were so pretty. So this is definitely inspired by that. I'm like obsessed with Christmas ornaments. Okay, and then we're going to, because the color I mixed is kind of a little bit different the second time, so I'm gonna recolor this, and we're gonna leave that one because we don't wanna have another mishap where it bleeds and it's not quite dry yet. So just kind of repainting this one. Add a tiny bit more blue. This blue that I have here is cobalt blue that I'm mixing with the sap green. It's still a little bit off, but that's fine. We'll just add a little bit of that in here. Okay, cool. I am going to grab my smaller brush. So I was working with the size 6 brush. This is a size 1, and I want to give a tiny shadow in there. So I'm going to add that same mint color, but add a little bit of black to it, and just add like a tiny shadow because it's that little hook that you would hang the ornament with. I swear that just the tiniest details make a painting amazing. You don't notice it when you look at it, but when you're painting, you're like, wow, that really changed the whole thing. That's how I feel about adding little specks of white to a pet portrait's eyes. It's really amazing. I am gonna take that same darker shadow and go on the side of this too. Okay. And then for the white, just I had that grayish color that I have on my brush right now, just a tiny little line so it sees it. And if you want, you could even put a line of that gray in here to kind of show that it's circular. You don't have to do that though. Okay, now we're going to paint some of these berries. I'm gonna grab that kind of corally color that I had, and I'm just drawing a circle, or sorry, painting a circle, rinsing off my brush, just having water on my brush and filling it in. And I want to see a little more pink in it, so I'm gonna add just like a little drop of pink. And I think it looks extra good when you leave a little white center. It looks like the berry is shiny. And then for this other berry, I'm gonna add a little red. So we want a little bit of some variation here. Again, I'm just making a circle, adding a little more pigment to one side that would be shadowed, rinsing off my brush, adding water, kind of mixing it all in. I'm gonna hold off on this berry because I want us to be able to paint this guy right here. All right, we're going back to our red, and what we need to think about is this is that inside loop of a ribbon. So this would be a lot darker than this top. So let's paint the top first, then we know how dark to make the inner part. And just, again, I'm just outlining. I have a little too much water on my brush, so I'm coming back to get some of that off. And then I'm just outlining it, going around this little berry that will be here. Rinsing off my brush. And if you want, you can leave a little part that looks like a highlight. I'm gonna pull my highlight by rinsing off my brush, drying it off, and then just pulling my brush like so. And I'm gonna pop in a little bit more dark red. So it looks kind of, you know how ribbons fold? So it looks kind of like that. Okay. That's pretty wet and we don't want to make our same mistake again. So I think we could do this guy. So grab that minty color again. Ideally, you want to make sure you mix up enough color so you're not having to remix every time, because then what happens is you usually end up with a color that's a different shade than the other parts. But we're not going to be too focused on perfection today. We're okay doing it like this. Just adding in water only. Okay. That. And then I'm adding just kind of a darker shadow here, because technically there would be some shadowing the way that they connect. Add a little darker right there. Okay, we could even add a darker shadow here too if we wanted to. All right, so we're pretty much done with the ornament, and now we're just waiting for some other areas to dry. I think we can go ahead and make this ribbon. So we want this and this to match in color. Going back to that Scarlet Lake color. And we're just, oop, there's way too much water. Just outlining it. Outlining it here. And let's pretend like it goes through here a little bit. Oops, sorry. So outlining. And I do want to poke in a little more pigment. It's looking a little too light. So add some pigment here, and then I'm rinsing off my brush. I'm coming back with just water and just touching along the edges so it kind of flows. And you can make your ribbon any color you want. I'm gonna add in slightly more pigment here because there would technically be a shadow. And I am going to rinse off my brush, dry off my brush, and then I'm going to pull a highlight. So I'm just pressing down with my brush and pulling pigment. All right, and we need to paint the inside of here, but we need this to dry first. So let's wait for this to dry. We're so close to the end, we don't want to ruin it. Okay, so this layer is dry, and what we're going to do is paint this other berry. And since it's so close to this red ribbon, I am going to make it a lot more kind of yellowy. So there's a big contrast between them. And it's really small, so I'm kind of just painting the whole thing and adding water as I go. And adding a little red to it. And I'm actually gonna put another one down here too, just behind the bulb. Grabbing that yellow again. There we go. Kind of mixing in the water. All right, and the last thing we're going to do is make this darker piece here. I'm gonna grab my size 2 paintbrush and grab the red, and I had some green right here. It's kind of making it more brown, which I don't want it to be brown, so I'm going to get more red. I just want it to be a darker red, so I could add maybe a dark blue or something like Payne's Gray, which is kind of a darkish blue to it, and maybe a little more red. I just don't want it to look too murky. Okay, that's pretty good. So I'm gonna come in here, and I know this looks insanely dark right now, and I'm just making a outline, rinse off my brush, get just water, and kind of blend it in. Okay, so that turned out to be too harsh. I'm gonna add more red to it, kind of pull it down. There we go. So that was a little too dark. But you can always come in and do my technique for rinsing off your brush and then pulling up that highlight. If you thought it was too dark, you can grab some of that pigment. It does need to be darker than this though, because it needs to show that it's a shadow. I might even take some of this black, kind of come in there to show more of a shadow. All right. Some little things that you can do if you want to add some embellishments to this. So that same dark color, you could take it and kind of draw a line around where the bulb is, because that would be a shadow. Another area would be, let's see, the light's coming in this way, so maybe there's a shadow here. And maybe there's 2 little shadows coming in here because it's where it folds. And a line up here as well. This is looking a little gray, so I am going to add a touch of red in there. And you could add some lines into these if you wanted to, but that is your ornament. I hope you enjoyed this. Please let me know what you thought of this tutorial in the comments or what you plan on doing with your artwork. Thanks for watching.